Hey, before you watch this video, coming up, go to the link right down below. It's challenge.com, and you can fill out a bracket for March Mascot Madness, which is going to kick off on March 2nd over on twitch.tv/Shaunosaurus Do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Enjoy the video. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 58 of Week in Review. My name is Sean, and on this week's show, we have impressions of Far Cry New Dawn. We'll talk a little bit about Crackdown 3, the single player and the multiplayer. We'll also look forward to this week's new releases. First up on this week's show is Far Cry New Dawn, a game that kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit, got a little busy, saw a bunch of movies, played a bunch of Crackdown 3, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And so I just started this game as of recording last night, so Sunday night I put about 3 hours or so into it. And I like the game, even if it is, you know, it's that same Far Cry formula, so it feels very, like, been there, done that. And I don't think the setting helps that. It's like, oh, you're still in Hope County. I remember I spent a bunch of time in this area in Far Cry 5, and I don't know, I think that even though, like, the art style looks really nice, like, I like that it's a colorful and bright post-apocalyptic world. Like, the fact that I'm still in Hope County is like, okay, I've seen these areas before, but it does, you know, have a new what's the term, a new, like, art direction, I guess, if you can call a nuclear disaster an art direction. This game takes place 17 years after Far Cry 5. Spoilers for Far Cry 5. I didn't really care because, you know, I didn't really enjoy the game all that much, but basically what happens at the end of Far Cry 5 is a bunch of nukes go off. It completely nukes the wasteland, or nukes that one place, Hope County, and turns it into a wasteland that the Earth then, like, takes back over. And what I like about this particular game, and specifically the narrative structure of this game, is my complaint about Far Cry 3 and 4 and 5 are that they have really, really cool villains, and they are, like, the point of the game, but they're not in it nearly enough. What this game does is it does a good job of setting up that the whole point of the game, for the most part, is rebuilding the world. Like, that's your task. And the two twins that have taken over are delightfully twisted and demented, and that, like, very Far Cry villain, I feel like they really nailed that down. But they're not the focal point of the game. The focal point is rebuilding, and they just happen to be an object in the way of that goal. So they are something you have to pay attention to. The Highwaymen is what that group is called. And I think that really helps the narrative structure of this game. Because the other games spent so much time, like, building these villains and showing how, like, we have to take them down, we have to do this, that, and the other thing. Everything else felt so, like, meandering and kind of useless in a way that was like, I really just would like to get to this main villain. And it was, I think, especially, like, I don't know if egregious is the right word, but, like, it was especially annoying in Far Cry 5, where basically you have to do a bunch of stuff to get to one of the siblings, to knock them out, to break down the defenses for somebody else. Like, oh, this is a lot of steps that I don't really want to take to do this. But I feel like I have a better primary objective that I can work towards with rebuilding. And that brings in the biggest change in this game. There's a bunch of different types of loot that you can get. I've seen, like, duct tape and gears and, like, spark plugs or whatever. Like, so there's a bunch of different stuff all over the world that you can pick up that you then use to create, like, weapons and things of that nature. I'm not really sure. I haven't dug too far into it. I've only played about 3 hours of the game, so I really only have experience with the weapons because I made a couple of the weapons. And so you collect a bunch of different stuff that you then use to craft. So instead of going out and going to a weaponsmith, you build the weapons instead. And so that's, like, kind of a nice, like, side objective of, like, I need 45 gears, for example, for this particular gun, but I only have 35. I'll run over to this area, and you can discover areas, and it'll tell you what's in that area. So some areas have, like, hey, there's, like, 4 stashes of duct tape here. Or this other area will tell you, hey, there are 3 stashes of gears. So you know kind of where to look, and it gives you a pretty good idea. That stuff pops up pretty naturally as well. And once you're done, it'll give you a little check mark, so you know you don't have to go back there to look for anything else. There are, like, bonus other little things you can loot that give you extra stuff, like bullets and other things of that nature, but they're not necessary to completing the area. So it's nice to look at the map and not only one, like how organically that shows up because you're just driving on the road and it'll be like, oh, you've discovered this area, you've discovered this area, but having that little green check mark is super helpful. In addition, you can upgrade the whole of prosperity. You can upgrade a bunch of different aspects such as cartography or weapons or medicine, things of that nature, your garage. And it takes ethanol to upgrade all of that stuff, and that's the rarest ingredient that you have to go out and find. And it's the one thing that I'm like, man, I wish there was a different way to go about this. I wish some of them needed ethanol and some of them needed gears and some of them needed duct tape. Kind of more like when in the other games you would need to upgrade your like satchels or whatever for more explosive ammo or more overall ammo, that sort of thing. Like it bounced around from you need this sort of pelt to you need this badger pelt to deer pelt, and it kind of bounces around. Again, I'm still early in the game, so that could change. But so far, everything in order to get it to the next level needs to be ethanol, and that kind of sucks. I have so many of the other crafting materials, it leads me to believe that they might come in handy for other things, but I haven't done enough digging to really figure that out. So maybe that criticism or problem works itself out as I get farther into the game. The other new aspect of this game that I really enjoy is the kind of RPG-ish elements of having 3 separate tiers of weapons and cars, or actually 4 separate tiers. There's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then like a legendary tier. And upgrading the things in the base that are related to that, such as the garage and the weapons area, gives you access to a further level down, which means you can take on tougher enemies and do all that sort of thing. So it's a nice way to like make you feel like there's progression. The enemies also have little bars over their head, which are really nice to watch go down, and they have a lot of numbers that pop off of them. So you're like, when you're shooting them with like an SMG, it takes like 24 damage or whatever, and you're like, oh man, it'd be cool if I could take more damage off of that. It also alleviates the criticism I had with Far Cry 5, which was not having a hit marker, because there were so many times where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm hitting this person or not. Having that number pop and watching that bar go down is really helpful, because I know I'm shooting in the right spot to finish them off, because the ammo can still be a little bit finite. You use materials to create ammo as well. I forgot to mention that. But overall, I mean, I think it's doing enough different to kind of keep my attention. I really like the way the game looks. I think it runs really well. It's a very nice open world game. It does a good job of having stuff all over the map to go and collect and clear out and all that sort of stuff, which works for me. It has some interesting additions in upgrading prosperity, some RPG-ish elements. It has a perk system. You have to complete challenges to unlock perk points, to unlock perks, and so on and so forth. They also have like the hidden stash, like treasure hunt things that are a little more puzzly that I think are interesting, and I'm glad that they're there. Even if one of them was staring me right in the face, the answer was right in my face, and I was like, I can't figure this out for like 10 minutes, and then I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is what they wanted you to do. I wish I would have figured that out 10 minutes ago. Clearing out the outposts is still fun. You go out and you get new buddies, doing all that fun stuff. It's a game that we'll see if I get back to. I wouldn't be surprised if I hit this like 3-hour mark and I'm like, okay, cool, and I get distracted by other things such as a March Mascot Madness tournament and another game that I'm looking forward to coming out later tonight, actually, as of recording, about 3 hours from now. So Far Cry New Dawn, so far so good. Will I get back to it? That remains to be seen. The second game on this week's show is Crackdown 3. I played both the single player and the multiplayer portions of the game, and I walked away actually fairly impressed, more so with the single player side. The multiplayer has some more problems with it that I was kind of annoyed with, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But I spent a whole weekend with it, which I think is a good sign. This game hit at the right time and hit me in the right mood. Just getting over like whatever deathly 8-week sickness I had. That's an exaggeration. It was only there for like a week and a half. This is a mindless third-person shooter. There's a story there if you really want it. Some stuff happens. I don't really remember because the story isn't all that important. What is important about this game is you run around and you collect agility orbs and you blow a bunch of shit up and you feel really cool and powerful. And that's the game. The game has a ton of stuff on the map that you walk around and clear out, and everything's close enough to where you're like, well, I'll just bounce over here and do this, and then I'll just go over here and do this, and then I'll go over here, and then you see some orbs, and then you do that for 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden 8 hours go by and you realize, I haven't left my room in 8 hours. I should probably get up and go somewhere. But then you realize it's 10 o'clock and it's really cold and everything's closed. So you missed your chance at McDonald's there last Saturday, Sean. So I mean, that's definitely a positive of this game, is that it's one of those things where it's like, if it hits you in the right mood, you'll probably really enjoy your time with it. If you're looking for a game that has a ton of story, sorry, you're not going to find that here. There are interesting villains and interesting characters that are involved in this game that have like a personality and are kind of fun to hear from, but because they're not the focal point, I don't really care. So I wasn't really listening. Like, I kind of tune in and out. I had like Overwatch League running on my laptop in front of me as I was watching that and playing the game at the same time. And that's like the perfect way to play this game. If you want to just play something where you don't have to pay attention and you just run around for a little while, but you kind of want to keep an eye on something else, listen to a podcast, that's a perfectly reasonable way to play this game. Some of the other positives of this game are the way you actually level up. You level up just through natural playing. The only thing I didn't level up was the driving skill. So you have 5 skills. You have melee, explosives, driving, agility, and guns. I don't remember exactly what that one's called, but the 5th one's just general weapons. And you upgrade all of those through natural play. The agility orbs are everywhere. You use almost like this game wants to be a platformer sometimes. You like jump around and you pick those up, and they are everywhere. I think there are like 700 of them or something. There is a ridiculous number of them, and there are there's like 150 hidden orbs or something like that, and those are really tricky to find. A lot of the hidden orbs I stumbled on, which give you stat boosts to everything. A lot of those I just kind of randomly ran across because I ended up in a weird spot and panned the camera in a certain angle that was like, oh, there's a hidden orb over there. I wasn't actually necessarily looking for them. And those are going to be like infuriating to find because some of them are really, really pesky. And once you start getting down to, oh, there are like 3 total orbs left in this area, like 2 agility and 1 mystery or hidden orb, I can imagine that people are going to like pull their hair out because it's just like the bright side of this, and I'm kind of feel like I'm getting all over the place here, is the map is broken down into fairly small sections, and each section of the map is listed on exactly what is in that area. So there's the agility orbs and the hidden orbs. There are also fallen agent DNA, which gives you more characters to play as. Certain characters have certain stat boosts. I just used why am I thinking of Hayden Panettiere? What? I don't know where that came from. I just used Terry Crews's character the entire time because I really like Terry Crews. And there are some other miscellaneous objectives that you can do in the areas as well. Stuff like there are big towers that you can climb. The big towers are fun, and they're interesting in the fact that they are a different style of play than the rest of the game. Like, a lot of the agility orb collecting is platforming in a way, but this is like you are platforming. You need to time your jumps and do your boosts and things of that nature. I also thought that the upgrades themselves were really, really helpful. I felt like as I was upgrading the agility, I was getting powers that were useful. You get like a double jump, and then you get a triple jump, and then you get like a dash boost, and then you get a double dash boost. So at the end of the game, when you have it through rank 5, you can jump a second time, do 2 like forward thruster boosts, and then jump a third time, and you can really cover a lot of ground. The one that I used the least was the driving skill because the map is really, really small, and I never really felt the need to drive. I drove a little bit in the middle area, which I don't think is super well designed from a like a platformy agility aspect. A lot of the other stuff feels like you can jump from building to building and cover ground without falling too far down. This one has like a big hole in the middle, so it's like if you miss a jump, you're going way, way down, and it's going to be a while before you get back up. Some of my frustrations with the game included the lock-on, which wasn't super great. There were a lot of times I'd be locked onto one guy, and I would you hold the left trigger, and then you hold the right trigger, and I held the left trigger to lock on so much that my hand actually started to like feel it, or I was like, oh boy, I'm really gripping this controller in a way that my hand isn't typically used to. The problem is when you let go of the left trigger and you try to pull it to the right or to the left, and then the game's like, no, you still want that same guy that you were locked on, right? And he's like 40 feet back, and he's like behind a building, and you're like, no, there's a guy right here that's right in front of me that I'd really like to lock on at any point. If you would like to just move over a little bit more to the boop, boop. That was like kind of annoying. And then the last 2 boss battles I did were super frustrating. It seems like the development team like hit a level where they were like, they should be X power. Go ahead and throw 800 enemies at them. they'll figure it out. And I really struggled down the stretch because there's just too much going on. There are ground troops, and then there's the main boss, and then there are aerial units. And with the problems with the lock-on, it's really difficult to tell what's hitting who and how, and it's kind of a big mess. On the bright side, though, this game does have, when you hit the left trigger, it pops on and it has a big red circle, and when you fire your guns, numbers start coming off, and that circle dissipates pretty quickly once you start to get really, really powered up. I did tend to use only about 3 to 4 different weapons. I used the bolt launcher, one of the laser guns, and the grenade launcher. The bolt launcher and the other fire gun, I'm doing this motion like it's going to help, had elemental damage, which was really cool, and I tend to like to play with those types of guns. I was thinking about, like, when I would play Borderlands, I really like that added element, that, like, acidic, I can't remember, what is it, like, toxic and, like, fire were the two that I typically used, and I thought it was cool to see it in this game, because I wasn't really expecting it. And honestly, I wasn't really expecting a whole lot out of this game. It's a fun blockbuster action game that you don't really have to think about. You run around, you collect orbs, you power up, you feel good. The power-ups feel good. The ranking seems to go at a pretty good clip. Like, it feels like you're constantly upgrading stuff. If you're not upgrading the explosives, you're upgrading the melee. If you're not upgrading the melee, you're upgrading the weapons. If you're not upgrading the weapons, on top of that, everything's color-coded. So if you're using, like, I was using the grenade launcher a lot, that's an explosive weapon, so you're getting explosive experience pretty consistently. You can balance out your loadout so that you can focus on the areas that you want to upgrade, and I thought that was really, really cool. I don't necessarily think there are any, like, super detrimental aspects to this game that are really like, man, this game sucks for this reason, or this game is hard to play for this reason. There isn't a ton of story. That's not why I'm playing this. If you are, you're going to be sorely disappointed. If you want to just blow a bunch of shit up, this is a good pick. This is a doubly good pick if you have Xbox Game Pass, which I think right now is like $2 for 2 months or something crazy like that. And it's only a 10 gig download. So all you're doing is using a couple hours of your time. If you are really against it, I guess don't download it. But if you have any interest in this game at all, I think it's worth a download if you have Xbox Game Pass. Flipping over to the multiplayer side of things, I don't actually think the multiplayer is all that great. It has some interesting ideas, and this is where the destruction aspect, the cloud-based destruction aspect, comes into play, because everything in the single player, it is where it is. The only stuff you can really blow up is cars. And I found that kind of disappointing, but maybe I just didn't remember E3 stuff correctly. This game, by the way, has been in development for like 4 or 5 years. It's finally now coming out. It is kind of a weird question of, like, why did they release this game? It's a good addition to Game Pass, but it's kind of a weird section of, like, they probably could have canned this game 3 years ago, and I don't think anyone really would have missed it that much. Of course, I say that, and I immediately am thinking of, like, people are really upset that Scalebound didn't come out, and it's like, I don't know why that game never looked very good. That's a completely separate opinion. Like I was saying, this is where the Microsoft Cloud destruction aspect comes into play, and that's probably the best part of it. I imagine that a lot of people are going to download this. It's also available in Xbox Game Pass. It's a separate download, which is interesting, and contains 12 achievements for 500 gamer score. The single-player campaign is its own separate list of a full 1,000. I do imagine that a lot of people are going to jump in for a couple of rounds, blow up some buildings, realize that there are some serious shortcomings with this, and bounce out, which is kind of where I sat. The shortcomings are that the weapons don't feel powerful enough, and everything is based on lock-on and seeing the other person first. And that's not super fun. The weapon that I was using in the multiplayer had 35 shots in it. It takes 37 shots of that particular gun to down an enemy. So basically what happens is I ended up where I was like, I hope I get the jump on them, and I get enough of a jump on them that when I lock on, which, by the way, it holds the lock on no matter what really happens, and that can be super disorienting. On the flip side, it makes it nearly impossible to get away from people, and that's super frustrating, where it's like I'm bending around corners and I'm trying to jump and move all around, and they're still shooting me somehow. Anyway, I have to hope that I get the jump on them for enough time to either be able to switch my weapon or go through a full reload animation, which the reload animation is canceled out by doing any sort of boosting. Though I think you can jump and be fine. But like, in order to try and get out of the way, you need to try and boost left or right. It's kind of a mess. It's not super fun. And I don't know if I was just having bad luck, but I routinely ended up on teams that had 2 people left against a full series of 5. So that was opening weekend. I can't imagine 2 weeks later that it's doing that much better. It's cool that it has its own separate achievement list. So if you do just want to do the single player campaign and get the full 1,000 there, you can do that. If you just want, for some reason, to torture yourself with multiplayer achievements, you can do that as well. But unfortunately, I didn't think it was a great multiplayer suite. This would have been probably more in the pleasant surprise sort of category. As soon as I heard the reports that it was like, hey, everything is lock on, and it's like, ooh, that's not good. That doesn't sound fun. It makes sense why, because everything is so vertical and moving around at a quick pace. You want people to feel like they can actually do some sort of damage, and it makes sense in certain ways, but it's also super frustrating on the flip side for a number of reasons. It's hard to get away, and the weapons don't always feel powerful enough. So I don't know. It's a cool addition. It's a separate download. It's also part of Game Pass. If you want to give it a whirl, I would get in quick because I don't think people are going to be hanging around for long. I know I certainly am not. Overall, Crackdown 3 is a pretty good experience. It has a decent single-player campaign that is mostly exploratory and kind of checking off boxes and clearing out areas. There are interesting characters and there's a story there somewhere. It's not super prominent, so if you want to do this and like listen to a podcast, that's probably the best way to do this. I personally watched a bunch of Overwatch League, but I had a good time. I spent probably 12 hours with that, the single player aspect of it. I did not spend much time in the multiplayer, and what I played had some interesting stuff in building destruction, but some also not super great stuff in the way everything is lock-on based. I don't know. It's an uneven package. I don't think it's necessarily amazing. I don't think it's terrible. I'd say it's good. Finally, on this week's show, we'll take a look at this week's new releases. There is one game coming out this week, and it's the only game that matters. Trials Fusion? No. Try again. The Lego Movie 2, the video game. I'm very excited for this game. I love the Lego Movie 2, and I thought the Lego Movie 1 video game was really good. I also just really like Lego video games, and I'm very excited about it. It comes out in 2.5 hours. Yeah, that looks right. 2.5 hours. In theaters, there's nothing. I mean, Greta's out, but I don't know. The movie looks kind of weird, and it sucks that they gave away like the whole twist of it in the trailer, which is unfortunate. And then Ralph Breaks the Internet is on Blu-ray this week, a movie that I just never got around to. So will I get around to it on Blu-ray? I don't know, probably not, but there's always hope, I guess. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you like the content, scroll down just a little bit and hit that subscribe button, and then you can scroll down a little bit more and leave a comment if you so desire. This is your final chance to fill out a bracket for March Mascot Madness. It's going to tip off, I got it right that time, over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex this Saturday, sometime in the early afternoon, probably about 3 o'clock or so. But stay tuned to my Twitter. You can follow me at ShaunosaurusRex. It's at the front of most episodes. I'd say every episode, but sometimes I forget. You can follow me there. It's also in the description, and I'll have a more concrete time later in the week. But while you're doing that, just be sure to go fill out a bracket. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you missed the live broadcast of those, hopefully they'll go up on youtube.com right here on this very channel, and you can catch them there. And then you stick around, hang out, just leave a page open, and check back every Tuesday for more Week in Review. See you next week.